Before we start getting in-depth learning Node.js, I'd firstly like to take you through some of the practices I'll be using and some of the tools I'll be using as well, just to give you an idea of how we're going to do things, and so you're not distracted by maybe wondering why I'm doing something a certain way later on. Also, I get asked a lot about how I set things up and what's a good environment for me. But remember, there's no right or wrong answer here. I mean, everyone's got an opinion, right? But you work the way you feel most comfortable. Let's start with my text editor. In the previous module, you saw this code being written out. And this is done in my favorite text editor, Sublime Text version 3. You can download a free trial of it and try it out on your machine. It's available for most platforms. I should, however, point out that it is a text editor, albeit a very good one. It's not an integrated development environment, something like the Visual Studio series from Microsoft, for instance. Its job is to quickly edit text and give you a little bit of help on the way. So you see here, for instance, it's color schemed everything in my JavaScript file. It's recognized that it's JavaScript syntax, that's mainly just from the JS extension, and is helping me by coloring everything automatically. You can also get a wide range of plugins freely available for Sublime Text, including themes. My favorite theme is called Material, and this is the one you can see installed here. It's very easy on the eye. And I've also changed the default font to Fira Code, which is a free font designed specifically for writing code in. It's very readable and, just like the theme, very easy on the eye. And no, I don't code in this ridiculous font size. That's for your benefit. Don't panic if you open up a command line for the first time and it's something you're unfamiliar with and it doesn't look exactly like this. Modern terminals, like this one I'm using on Mac, can be themed endlessly. And I like an old school green on black theme. I've also simplified the command prompt so there's not a load of useless confusing information on it. Here I'm using the Monaco font, another very readable font for coding in. A quick word about my coding style. I tend to stay with the sort of standards, so I will use camel case for my variables. But when it comes to writing classes, I'll stick to capital letters. Also, and probably much more contentiously, if I'm writing an if statement, I put my braces here and I hug my else's. Now, some experienced programmers will now be throwing coffee at the screen in anger, but it's just the way I do it. And if you want to do the other accepted way and want to code like that, please go ahead. You're not going to get any complaint from me. More importantly, let's talk about ECMAScript 2015. Now, the current version of Node, as we're recording this, is version 8, and it more or less fully implements ECMAScript 2015. That means we can use some of its cool new features safely, knowing it's going to work everywhere. Now, there's lots and lots of new features in 2015, but there are 3 you will see me consistently using. The first is the alternative way of defining variables. 2015 gives us 2 more to play with. We can now replace var with let. The other one is const, and const, you've probably seen from other programming languages, is a constant value. In most cases, we can use const, and that's the accepted programming style. Use const first. If you must change the variable, use let. When we're using modules, we will occasionally be pulling in code that was written pre these standards or is not yet adhered to these standards. So I will be updating them to make sure they're compliant with ECMAScript 2015. The next new pattern you'll see me use a lot of is arrow functions. So let's look at a typical callback. So I'm not going to assume you know this function, but set timeout takes 2 parameters, a callback function and milliseconds. And when you run it, all it will do is call that callback function after the amount of milliseconds, in this case 1 second. There you go, a pause of 1 second and then done. Now I'm going to convert that to an arrow function. All I have to do is remove function and put an equals and an angled bracket at the end of it. It's exactly the same. All it's doing is saving us the hassle of having to type function. And if I run that now, exactly the same again. Finally, let's look at string interpolation. String interpolation gives us an easy way to drop variables into strings. It's also brilliant when it comes to things like escaping characters because a lot of the work's done for you. To do this, you surround everything with the backtick operator. Okay, second one looks messier, but when you're dealing with long strings and variable names, it's actually a lot easier to put things in. Or just add some spaces in there. As you can see, exactly the same output. If you want to know anything more about ECMAScript 2015, maybe you should go off and have a Google and have a look around, or, you know, maybe buy a course by somebody. That might be good. Now we're all set on how we're going to do things. The last thing I want to talk about in the final module of this section is debugging.